This recounts my Halloween experience from last year. I spent the evening at home in my basement, watching a movie with a friend who had come over to hang out after we'd socialized with other friends earlier in the day. Our movie choices weren't necessarily of the scary variety. We did have a few trick-or-treaters visit throughout the night, even though my house is in a quiet neighborhood with mostly spacious properties. However, neighborhood kids still came by for treats. I kept a bowl of candy by the front door, and we had occasional interruptions every 10 to 15 minutes until around 9 or 9:30 p.m. when it slowed down. So, when the doorbell rang close to 11 p.m., it struck me as unusual. I went upstairs from the basement while my friend remained downstairs. Upon reaching the front door, I found a person dressed as a cat standing on the porch. The individual seemed a bit tall for a child, but I couldn't be certain. Their costume, especially the mask, appeared eerie and incredibly lifelike. I couldn't discern anything about the person wearing it. Curiosity led me to open the door, as I still had some candy left. The person uttered trick or treat, but I instantly detected that it was a man, not a child. I chuckled and inquired about his age, to which he remained silent and continued standing there. I offered him a candy, and he remained in place, staring at me. I remarked that it was rather late for trick-or-treating, but he didn't respond. Strangely, he took a step closer to me. This made me uncomfortable, so I stepped back inside and shut the door. I wished him a good night, locked the door, and noticed that he was still on my front porch. It felt eerie, but I returned to the basement after that. We resumed the movie, thinking that would be the end of the trick-or-treaters. However, just a minute later, the doorbell rang again, and I paused the movie with an eye roll. I had a hunch it was the guy in the cat costume, but I couldn't fathom his intentions. I shared my concerns with my friend, and she accompanied me upstairs. To our surprise, the cat-clad man was still standing on the front porch. I wasn't sure what he wanted, especially since I had already given him candy, and he was an adult, not a child. I decided not to answer the door this time. We observed him for about a minute and then went back downstairs, hoping he would get the hint and leave. After returning to the basement, we resumed the movie for the next 10 minutes without any issues. We sat on the couch in my finished basement, watching TV as it had the largest screen. However, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of something outside. My basement was mostly below ground, but it had a few windows to the outside. I noticed someone at one of the windows, and despite the darkness, I could discern the cat face peering in. The man was there, watching us. I screamed upon seeing him, and my friend joined in shortly afterward. We both rushed upstairs. At first, I was in a panic and unsure of what to do. Eventually, as I calmed down, I checked a different window overlooking the backyard but saw nothing. I turned on a light, revealing an empty backyard. He must have left. We then went around to every window in the house and looked outside, but the guy was gone. He didn't return for the remainder of the night. I never discovered his identity or his true intentions, but his behavior was undeniably unsettling. I live alone in a cozy house situated in a serene neighborhood. While I'm not particularly enthusiastic about celebrating Halloween, I do take pleasure in adding some decorations to create a festive atmosphere. Each year, I generously distribute candy to the children who come knocking on my door. If I were to estimate, I usually receive around 10 to 20 trick-or-treaters. A few years ago, everything seemed typical on Halloween night. I had a modest display of decorations on my front porch and a bowl of candy inside for the visiting kids. After returning from work, I was relaxing in my living room. The children began arriving early, and as it got darker around 7:30, I heard my doorbell ring once more. I got up to answer it and found two youngsters dressed as superheroes, probably around the age of 10. I greeted them and offered them some candy. To my surprise, one of the kids asked me about the man who had darted behind my house. I was puzzled. The child inquired if the man lived here and if he was attempting to frighten them, mentioning that they were initially hesitant to approach the front porch because of him. I remained perplexed and probed for more details. The child revealed that as they approached my driveway, they spotted a figure dressed entirely in black, wearing a mask concealing their entire face. This person had been standing near the door. When the kids were halfway up the driveway, the individual abruptly dashed around to the back of my house. I assured the kids that I had no knowledge of this person and suggested he might have been another trick-or-treater. However, the kids insisted that the individual was definitely an adult. Though concerned, I told the kids I didn't have any answers and bid them farewell. After their departure, I couldn't ascertain if they were simply playing a prank on me, but I didn't believe they were. Nevertheless, I decided to investigate by going to the back of my house and looking out the window into the backyard. Peering out, I didn't notice anything unusual, although the lighting back there was far from ideal. I couldn't make much of it and returned to my living room, resuming my seat. Some time passed without any more trick-or-treaters. Then, I heard a noise at my back door, as if someone was trying to gain entry. My mind instantly went back to what the child had mentioned. I rose from my chair and approached the back of the house. When I reached the door and peered through the window, I could discern a person, mostly obscured but unmistakably dressed in black, including a mask. This was undoubtedly the same individual. Suddenly, he retreated a short distance from the door. I walked over and flicked on the switch for the outdoor backlight. As I did this, the individual took off running. I caught a good glimpse of him as he fled from my yard, circling around to the front of the house. He was a tall man, at least 6 feet, shrouded in black, his face concealed. I couldn't make out any facial features. I returned to the front of the house and observed the man heading back into the street and disappearing from my view. For the remainder of that night, I only received 2 or 3 more trick-or-treaters. The man never returned, and I kept a watchful eye on my windows to ensure my safety. I'm grateful to that child who alerted me to the presence of the stranger. Reflecting on it still gives me the creeps. I have no idea who he was or what his intentions were. I suspect he might have been trying to enter my house through the back or possibly break in once I turned on the light. My actions must have deterred him, but I remain unsure if my house was chosen randomly or if there was a specific reason behind his unsettling visit. I can only hope he never returns. Many years ago, back when I was just a kid, around 2005 to be precise, I recall a vivid Halloween night from my youth. Despite my tender age, I have a remarkably clear memory of that evening. You see, Halloween was a source of immense excitement for me as a child, given my love for trick-or-treating and the prospect of amassing a mountain of candy. The entire day was a carnival of joy. That particular year, I embarked on the trick-or-treating adventure with my older sister, who was approximately 10 years old at the time. Our parents entrusted us with the task of roaming the neighborhood, collecting treats, while they stayed home to look after our younger sibling, a 3-year-old. They'd distribute candy to other kids and care for our little brother. Our neighborhood was replete with houses of similar size, stretching out towards a park at the end of the street, and more streets with houses extending beyond that. Our plan was to visit our street and perhaps 3 or 4 nearby streets, heeding our parents' advice not to venture too far. As the sun began to set, we started our Halloween journey. I was dressed as a race car driver, although I can't quite remember my sister's costume. Our neighborhood was bustling with kids and families enjoying the festive evening, and we encountered many familiar faces as we visited the houses on our street, where we knew our neighbors. However, as we ventured toward the end of the street, where unfamiliar faces resided, a peculiar incident occurred. A van passed by us not once but 3 times, driving at an unusually slow pace. While the street was generally quiet, the slow-moving van raised our suspicions, as our parents had always cautioned us about such vehicles. We hesitated but continued to the next street, from where the van had initially appeared, hoping it was just an innocent coincidence. On this new street, we traversed from one side to the other, making our way to each house with diligent trick-or-treating. As we neared the park at the end, the van reappeared for the third time, moving at a crawl before coming to a halt near us. The driver, a man with a grayish beard, glasses, and a baseball cap, rolled down his window and cheerfully beckoned us to approach. While we had been taught never to approach strangers or their vehicles, this situation seemed different, given the Halloween spirit and the man's apparent intent to distribute candy. In the spirit of the holiday, we cautiously approached, maintaining a safe distance. He offered us a bowl of candy, urging us to take as much as we wanted. Reluctantly, we each took a couple of mini fun-sized candy bars, and he insisted we take more. Then, he pointed to the side door of the van, suggesting there was even more candy inside. Sensing something amiss, we politely declined and walked away, with the man still wearing a friendly smile. We continued on our route, but the man in the van remained parked, observing our every move. A sense of unease began to creep in as we made our way through the park to the next street. Fortunately, we gathered plenty of candy on the new street, filling our bags to the brim. Deciding it was time to head home, we were taken aback to spot the van once more as it entered the street from the opposite end. Alarmed, we sprinted towards the park, attempting to distance ourselves from the van. Reaching the path leading back to our street, we kept a watchful eye on the van as it crawled past us, its presence becoming increasingly unsettling. My sister and I discussed the peculiar situation, our young minds sensing that something wasn't quite right. Quickly retracing our steps along our street, we noticed the van had disappeared. Relieved, we finally arrived home and settled in, the time nearing 9 p.m. We indulged in our hard-earned candy while watching TV and unwinding. However, the night took a chilling turn when I spotted the van once more through the front window, its slow progress sending my heart racing. I urgently called my sister, who was in the kitchen with our parents. The van came to a stop right in front of our house, further escalating our fear. My parents rushed to the window as my dad pulled back the blinds to investigate. As he did so, the van suddenly sped away. We recounted the strange events to our parents, who cautioned us about interacting with strangers. It appeared that the mysterious man had finally departed for good. Hours passed, and it must have been a weekend since we were allowed to stay up late. I was enjoying my candy while watching TV when I heard the sound of a car outside. Peeking through the blinds, I saw the van returning once more, moving at its characteristic slow pace. This time, it went a bit past our house and parked on the side of the street, which sent shivers down my spine. My panicked cries for my parents brought them to the room once again, and they witnessed the man stepping out of the van and walking toward our front yard. My dad hurriedly opened the front door, causing the man to abruptly retreat to his van and speed away. It was an eerie moment. Fearing for our safety, my parents promptly called the police, who arrived shortly to hear our account of the bizarre events. We reported the suspicious behavior, and thankfully, the man did not reappear for the remainder of the night. In hindsight, it's clear that my sister and I narrowly escaped a potentially dangerous situation. While we were cautious and would never have entered the van, the man's actions were undeniably suspicious. It's my hope that he meant no harm, but there is no denying the unsettling nature of his behavior. This incident dates back to my childhood when I was around 14 years old, approximately 18 years ago. Halloween held a special place in my heart as one of my favorite holidays. I cherished the opportunity to spend time with friends, don quirky costumes, and embark on candy-collecting adventures. During that particular year, my friend Sean was coming over to join me for a night of trick-or-treating followed by a sleepover at my house. At that time, I lived with my mom and my older sister, who was away at her best friend's house. Sean and I set off to trick-or-treat around 5 p.m., exploring our typical suburban neighborhood with many houses and a quiet atmosphere. Despite the tranquility of my street, it was still frequented by local kids in search of Halloween treats. We diligently visited all the houses on my street and even ventured onto the adjacent street, indulging in hours of candy hunting until our bags were brimming. It was around 8 o'clock when we decided to return home. Up to that point, everything appeared ordinary and uneventful. We spotted numerous other kids partaking in the Halloween festivities, making our experience seem entirely normal. The walk home took approximately 30 minutes, but eventually we reached our destination. Back at my house, Sean and I eagerly delved into our candy haul, while my mom retired to bed early. With no school the following day, we planned to stay up late playing video games, perhaps the PlayStation 2 or the popular gaming console of that era. We were engrossed in various entertaining multiplayer games, but our gaming session was abruptly interrupted by the doorbell ringing. Naturally, we assumed it was another trick-or-treater, although the lateness of the hour and the fact that my mom had turned off the front porch light raised some suspicion. Glancing at the clock, we realized it was a little after 10 o'clock, an unusual time for visitors. We paused the game, and I cautiously approached the door with Sean following me. Before opening the door, we peered through the living room window to check who was outside. To our surprise, we saw a grown man standing at our doorstep, devoid of any costume or familiarity. This was no trick-or-treater. Fearing that the man might spot us, we quickly closed the curtains. Perplexed and unsure of what to do, we decided to ignore the situation, unwilling to answer the door to a stranger late at night. The man rang the doorbell once more, and we hoped my mom would come downstairs, but she didn't. After the second ring, an eerie silence settled over the house. Sean and I assumed the man had left, offering some relief. Thinking the coast was clear, we intended to resume our video games, but Sean suggested we check the window to confirm the man's departure. I agreed and approached the window, pulling back the curtain to take a look. However, to my shock, I found the man standing right on the other side of the window, making eye contact with me. I hastily closed the curtains, and Sean and I sprinted out of the room and up the stairs to my bedroom. Feeling scared and uncertain about the man's intentions, we closed and locked the bedroom door, hoping that we'd be safe there. As we discussed the bizarre encounter, we suddenly heard the sound of glass breaking from downstairs, intensifying our fear. Without hesitation, we rushed to my mom's bedroom down the hall, woke her up, and informed her of the alarming situation. She reached for the phone in her bedroom to call the police, and I locked the bedroom door. Together, we retreated to the closet, hoping to remain undetected. Although we heard no further noises, we knew the intruder was still in the house. Time seemed to crawl as we anxiously awaited the arrival of the police, fearing the possibility of footsteps in the hallway or at the bedroom door. None of us had any knowledge of the intruder's identity or motives. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the police arrived, conducted a thorough search of the house, and confirmed that the intruder had left. He had broken into the front living room window, causing damage and stealing a few items from the house. Although shaken, we were relieved that the intruder was gone, though his reasons for breaking in remained a mystery. I couldn't help but feel uneasy for the rest of that night, fearing the intruder might return. Thankfully, he didn't, and this remains one of the most chilling Halloween memories I've ever had. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching.